JaylanMichael in the vibe we glow. Health, wealth, the world, we let it flow. Tune in, step up, the knowledge will grow. This is your space, let's start the show. Where we talk health, wealth in the world.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of My Wealth, My Legacy, the podcast where we talk about building our futures, our finances, and our communities here on the JaylanMichael channel. I'm your host, JaylanMichael, and I'm so glad you're tuning in today because we have a lot to unpack. We're talking about a story that's been bubbling up for a few months now, a story about a retail giant, a community's call for accountability, and some serious money moves that have a lot of people talking. I'm talking about the ongoing saga with Target. Now, I know what you're thinking, Jaylan, not another boycott story. But trust me, this one has layers. It's not just about what's happening in the Target stores that now have fewer shoppers with high melanin, women, LGBTQ plus folks, and so many more groups offended by Target's retreat from diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. It's about what's happening in the boardrooms, in our churches, and in our own wallets. We're going to get into all of it, from the initial calls for a boycott to a call for boycotting organizations and, most importantly, the people to hold the line. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get into it. All right, so let's set the stage. In January, word got out that Target was scaling back on its diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, initiatives. We're talking about programs and policies designed to create a more equitable playing field for everyone to financially benefit, especially for those from historically marginalized communities. And we're not talking about chump change, y'all. We're talking billions with a capital B. Here are a few very specific examples. First, Target ended their Racial Equity Action and Change, REACH initiative that launched in August 2020. Which importantly included a commitment to spend $2 billion with Black-owned businesses by the end of 2025. Target has not released the specific statistics of how much of the money was actually invested, and they are widely criticized for likely getting nowhere near that number. So, to eliminate the initiative altogether added insult to injury. The next thing that Target did was to rebrand and refocus its Supplier Diversity Team to supplier engagement with a focus on small business. In other words, there would be no more focus on attracting and retaining minority-owned brands, even though minority businesses represent a small fraction of Target's product distribution. Although Target doesn't publish exactly how many products they have, there is data available for their biggest competitor, Walmart. According to research conducted by Eva Commerce, Walmart carries 29,000 different products. We know that Target has about half the stores that Walmart has, and those stores are typically half the size of Walmart stores, especially the supercenters. So a bar napkin estimate puts the number of products at about 7,500. Okay, Target's goal, emphasis goal, was to get 500 brands of minority businesses by the end of 2025. Well, we know they didn't reach the goal. But even if they did, and we assume each of these brands had just 2 products to offer, that would equate to 13% of their supply chain. Prior to the February boycott, 40% of Target's customers were minorities, with 60 to 63% being women. In other words, it's okay to spend your money with us, but you're not going to make money with us. Finally, the company ended diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring goals and withdrew from third-party rankings for things like minority representation and LGBTQ+ inclusiveness. For instance, the company decided to stop participating in the Human Rights Campaign survey, which is a big deal for inclusive conscious shoppers and job seekers. Why? Because the corporate goal is to take a politically neutral approach according to a leaked internal memo. Well, Pastor Jamal Bryant of New Birth Baptist Church in Metro Atlanta and several other minority leaders wasn't just going to sit back and watch this happen. He decided to take action. He and his church initiated a 40-day fast from shopping at Target back in March. That's right, a retail fast. The goal was to put economic pressure on Target to get them to recommit to their promises. The demands were clear. Honor that $2 billion pledge to black businesses. Deposit $250 million in black-owned banks, set up retail centers at HBCUs, and get back on track with their DEI commitments. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture, it was a strategic move to hold a major corporation accountable. And it wasn't just Pastor Bryant. The boycott started to gain traction with other churches and community leaders joining in. But then, the story took a turn that has a lot of people, including me, scratching our heads. So you've got this boycott picking up steam. You have a community mobilizing saying, we're not going to spend our money where we don't feel valued. And you would think that the major organizations within that community would be in lockstep, right? Well, not exactly. This is where the National Baptist Convention USA comes into the picture. Now, for those who don't know, this is a massive and influential organization, one of the largest black religious organizations in the country. And right in the middle of this boycott, what do? They accept a $300,000 donation from Target. Yes, you heard that right. $300,000. The news dropped like a bombshell, and as you can imagine, the backlash was swift and fierce. People were confused, they were angry, and they felt betrayed. To put this into perspective, Twin Cities Pride, the LGBTQ+ organization that supports the Pride Festival for the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul in Minnesota, received $50,000 from Target in support of their Pride Festival this year. Y'all, there are 21,000 churches in the National Baptist Convention USA, and it's just one organization participating in the Target boycott. If you divided that $300,000 up for each of the communities those churches support, that would come to a grand total of about $14 per congregation. And for the record, Twin Cities Pride said no thank you to the $50,000 they got in solidarity with a general theme of the boycott, respect of our communities. Pastor Jamal Bryant, the man who started the boycott, was not happy. He publicly called out the National Baptist Convention and gave them a week to issue a statement in support of the boycott. He was essentially saying, you can't have it both ways. You can't claim to be for the community and then take money from a corporation that the community is actively protesting. Now, the leader of the National Baptist Convention, Reverend Boise Kimber, defended the decision. He said the money would be used for good things like scholarships, support for senior citizens, and programs for entrepreneurs. And I get that. $300,000 can do a lot of good. But this is where it gets complicated. It raises a really tough question. Is it okay to take money from a problematic source if you're going to use it for a good cause? Or does that just make you complicit? Does it undermine the larger movement for accountability? I've been thinking about this a lot, and I say, give the money back. We don't want your chump change. It's not too much to ask that the businesses that we support invest in our communities. By some estimates, the black people alone bring in $20 million per day for Target, and their give back is a one-time $300,000 rounding error? No, sir. No, ma'am. No, thank you. Worse, does it send a message that our principles are for sale? Does it weaken our negotiating power? If a corporation knows they can just write a check and make the problem go away, what's their incentive to make real systemic change? The money isn't the point. It's a big part of the point, but it's not the point. Respect, inclusion, and mutual benefit are the point. I'm not here to tell you what to think, but I do want to encourage you to think about it. What would you do in that situation? It's a tough one, and it's a conversation that's happening in communities all over the country right now. And as if one boycott wasn't enough, Target is now facing a second one, this time from a group called the People's Union USA. Now, this is interesting because this boycott is not directly related to the DEI issues. This is a grassroots organization that's all about taking power back from corporations. They've organized what they're calling economic blackouts against other giants like Amazon, Walmart, and General Mills. And now they've set their sights on Target with a permanent boycott that started in the first week of June. Their message is simple: shop anywhere but Target. They're encouraging people to take their money to local businesses, to smaller retailers, to anywhere that isn't a massive multinational corporation. So now you've got Target getting hit from two different angles. You have the DEI-focused boycott from the black churches, and you have this broader anti-corporate boycott from the People's Union USA. It's a perfect storm of consumer activism, and it's having a real impact. So what does all this mean for Target? Well, to put it bluntly, it's not looking good. The company's CEO, Brian Cornell, has admitted that the boycotts have hurt their sales. In the first quarter of this year, their comparable store sales were down by 3.8%. Foot traffic in their stores has dropped significantly, with a 9% decrease in February and a 6.5% decrease in March compared to last year. Y'all, these sound like small percentages, but when you're dealing with billions, it's a lot. It was so much that the stock dropped from a high of $142 to $94 per share. That equates to a year-to-date reduction of about 30% or $12.4 billion lost in market capitalization. Y'all, that's a lot of money. Oh, and did I mention that the Target board voted to cut their CEO Brian Cornell's pay by 45% because of the debacle? It begs the question, had they just lived up to their promises, where would they be? Beyond the numbers, there's the reputational damage. Target had built a brand around being a more progressive, more inclusive retailer. They were the cool big box store. Remember, y'all, I'm going to Tarjay. But now that image has been tarnished. And they know it. Brian Cornell has been on a bit of an apology tour. He met with Reverend Al Sharpton. He sent an email to employees reaffirming their commitment to inclusivity. But for many people, it's too little, too late. The trust has been broken, and it's going to take more than a few meetings and a well-worded email to win it back. More importantly, he hasn't done anything to reinstitute and cement the initiatives that had Target moving in a good direction. It's not lost on me that a huge reason for Target's retreat from DEI is because of the current hostility emanating from Washington, and it would be easy to place the blame there. But doing so lets the people with the real power off the hook. Target is a free market company. Their board and CEO make decisions that cannot be reproached so long as they follow the law. They made a choice. Just like Costco made a choice to say, we stand by our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. So no, Target cannot pass the buck to Washington. Y'all got to stand on your decisions. And it's clear the people are not standing with Target. So where do we go from here? As consumers, as community members, as people who are trying to build our own wealth and our own legacies, what do we do with this information? First, I think it's a powerful reminder that our money is our voice. Where we choose to spend our dollars sends a message. And when we come together, that message can be incredibly loud and incredibly powerful. The Target boycotts are proof of that. Second, I think it's a call to be more intentional about where we shop. It's easy to just go to the big box stores out of convenience. But what if we made a conscious effort to support more small, local, and Black-owned businesses? What if we invested our money in our own communities? That's exactly what I've done. I haven't shopped at Target since February, and I will withhold my funds from them until they act, not just commit, in accordance with the previous promises and more. Third, I think it's a challenge to stay engaged and to stay informed. These stories can be complicated, and it's easy to tune them out, but it's important to pay attention, to ask the tough questions, and to hold these corporations accountable. This isn't just about Target, this is about a larger conversation about corporate responsibility, about the role of big business in our society, and about the power of the people to demand change. I'm going to give a shout out to Roland Martin, who is leader of the Black Star Network and host of Roland Martin Unfiltered. He consistently points out that people quote Martin Luther King Jr. for a variety of things. They often quote his mountaintop speech. But, as Roland highlights, MLK talked about conscious economic choices as a tool to effect change. People like to quote the last 2 or 3 minutes of the speech where King talks about the mountaintop. But that speech is 43 minutes long. Years ago, I listened to the whole thing, and it made me a much more socially conscious spender. Target is the focus right now, but as our community gets more serious about our wealth and legacy, they are just the first on the list. In other words, this boycott ain't no joke. And that's all the time we have for today on My Wealth, My Legacy. I hope this episode has given you some food for thought. I want to hear what you think about all of this. Are you participating in the Target boycott? What are your thoughts on the National Baptist Convention's decision? Let me know in the comments below, or hit me up on social media at JaylanMichael. As always, thank you for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe to the channel and the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you really liked it, share it with a friend. The more people we have in this conversation, the better. Until next time, keep building your wealth, keep building your legacy, and keep making your voice heard. I'm JaylanMichael, and I'll see you in the next one.